Senate is now in the post-lunch session. And I next recognize Senator Tony Moore.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before us today, I think, is a relatively straightforward bill, a bill that would amend the Caribbean Community Movement of Skilled Nationals Act, Cap 186A. Specifically, as we've heard, this bill seeks to revise the categories of persons who are eligible to be recognized as skilled community nationals, and it also seeks to revise some provisions relating to the indefinite stay of skilled community nationals. I say that it is a relatively easy bill for debate because as a signatory to the CARICOM protocols amending the Treaty of Chaguaramas, the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, Barbados is obligated to ensure that it takes all necessary steps to ensure entry into force of any protocols and agreements relative to the CSME, the Caribbean Single Market and Economy, which would therefore mean that changes such as these proposed before us in this bill may become necessary from time to time, not only today, but as changes are agreed under the CSME. So, Mr. President, like those who spoke before me, I support the amendments before us. However, I wish in a very brief contribution to use this occasion to draw attention to the need for Barbados as a sovereign nation to position itself, the way I see it, as an active player in the global economy, yes, but more specifically within a CSME environment. I've heard before in a submission earlier this morning that we have our house in order. However, it's my view that we don't have our house in order. And I would like to suggest, therefore, that if definite action is not taken to adjust to the demands of competition, persons working in all areas that are covered under the Act and those which we are discussing today, that these persons may very well find themselves vulnerable to movement of labor, albeit in a Caribbean single market and economy. I would wish to illustrate this by drawing attention, for instance, to the category of security guard. When we look to the amendments before us, definition of security guard means a person who, A, holds a CVQ in security operations or any equivalent qualification, and, not or, and B, is registered with an agency which a member state permits to license and register security guards. By this definition, I would ask, where are these people? Where are these people, these security guards, that tomorrow or the day after the passage of this bill would be able to move freely in our Caribbean community? We have security guards that are registered with an agency, which is a member state. They get their licenses and so on. But how many security guards in Barbados do we have that hold a CVQ in security operations, or what may be termed an equivalent qualification? And that's because for some time we have focused skills or seen skills in very specific areas, given little attention to a number of those jobs, as I would call it, at the lower end of the strata. This definition, by illustration, should be highlighting to us all that we have a problem of training and skills upgrade of the workforce that must be addressed. Adding categories, Mr. President, is fine, but we must be prepared to take active steps as a sovereign nation to enable our citizens to participate fully in their workplaces, to participate fully in Barbados, and within the context of a CSME, to participate fully within a Caribbean community. Otherwise, we are not doing justice to our people. We speak a lot about developing through education and through training. And in very recent times, we have coined the RE program. We speak about retraining, and we speak about retooling, and we speak about empowering and enfranchising. But more has to be done for us to be able to move swiftly and effectively beyond the words. This is not intended to be a criticism of our policymakers, because I do believe that our policymakers, those of us in this house included, are conscious of the demands of the labor market. But there needs to be more active pursuit that ensures that our commitments move beyond mere commitments and are seen in our actions. There needs to be more responsible activism, I would call it, on development issues, particularly as it relates to developing our people, if we are to achieve social consensus, or what we like to term a shared vision. I remember our former Prime Minister, the Honourable Owen Seymour Arthur. He recognized as far back as 2004, that Barbados and indeed the Caribbean single market and economy could not succeed unless it resonates with the man and woman in the street. The CSME cannot succeed unless it resonates with the man and the woman in the street. Your domestic worker, our domestic workers, represent the man and the woman in the street. Security guards represent the man and the woman in the street. Agricultural workers represent the man and the woman in the street. And if it doesn't resonate with them, if all that we are doing here does not readily answer the question for them, what's in it for me? It's not resonating. And then true integration, as the CSME is intended to achieve, becomes compromised. These are amongst the areas which I see as the salt of the earth, and where the organization that I hail from has long recognized and indicated that that is where true integration should have been recognized as a foundation for a strong CSME in the first place. There can be no doubt that there has been much genuine effort and energy exerted by Caribbean leaders to bring the CSME into effect. However, the practical difficulties that I wouldn't go into right now, notwithstanding, provisions relating to freedom of movement are not guaranteed to catch the average man, the average woman in the street if it doesn't touch them within their everyday life, if it doesn't touch their families, if it doesn't touch their households. So training helps, but our labor market must also have standards that allow our people the right of first refusal when opportunities present themselves. And I say this very conscious that this could evolve into a debate on whether or not the statement is a xenophobic statement or not. And without fear of that, because I recognize exactly where it is going, if we have a community that just opens up its borders and allow people to be in and out without giving consideration to the realities that confront us. If we take Barbados today is one in which the economy is challenged, in which there's a higher rate of unemployment that should make any of us comfortable. If we don't understand that we must create an environment that provides for our citizens, the average man and the woman in the street, an opportunity to know that where opportunities present themselves, they have a right to first refusal. We may find that all of the debates we've heard earlier about being xenophobic and so on may become more apparent than they should be. I know that the labor movement within Barbados has sought within collective agreements to ensure that the average man, the average woman who is covered by a collective agreement has that right of first refusal. For instance, where new jobs become available, before you even look outside of the company, once it's a bargaining unit job, that those workers have the opportunity for vacancies to be advertised internally first. Because it is very possible that a worker who may have started out as a general worker, who may have started out as a receptionist, a clerical officer, may have developed themselves to such a level that if a job becomes available higher up in a bargaining unit, or even immediately above the ceiling of the bargaining unit, that person could be qualified and should be given the opportunity to compete internally first. And I speak of collective agreements, but that might be okay where collective agreements exist. But in most cases, much to my dismay, they don't. And therefore, it means that legislators, our representatives in government, must take attention and pay attention at the national level to creating an environment that ensures that citizens, albeit that we are part of a single market and economy, that our citizens are trained up, are protected sufficiently within the bounds of legislation to ensure that they can have the right of first refusal. And so that I make this point even more plainly. We have seen things, we've seen ads out in the paper, and I've had to mention it here already, where we're advertising for professional tree climbers, where we are advertising for cooks, where we are advertising for housekeepers. And I promised to make it a document of the house because I copied it, and that is one that still bothers me and I will never get rid of, because it was advertised in a 2018 edition of the Nation newspaper, right? But I say all that to say that there are skills that reside locally. But there are employers that for one reason or another would prefer to move not only outside of their companies, but even outside of Barbados to hire in some of the most basic skills. And one has to raise in his or her mind a question: why? Why would you need to go outside of Barbados for a cook when our BCC is churning out so many suitable people? Why would you have to go outside for a general worker? Why would you have to go outside for a housekeeper, for a professional tree climber? The trade union movement, and I happen to know about the Barbados Workers Union in particular, has always felt that genuine effort at integration, as I said before, should commence on a foundation that recognizes those categories at the lowest strata if the CSME is to be given stronger meaning. So we are glad that these amendments have gone an extra step. We recognize in the case of domestic workers, for instance, that it was added from 2009 and Barbados didn't add it until 2018. However, unless we improve systems to ensure regional employment standards, they will continue to be a kind of ambivalence at higher levels and official levels. That's when I say higher, that's what I mean. And negative attitudes towards a single market and economy. Systems must be put in place to ensure that our people are equipped and could compete as we seek to speak about giving full effect to a CSME. I know as it relates to the category of security guard that I highlighted, there are only 2 organizations now in Barbados, mine the most recent one, that has been offering CVQs in the particular area of security. That's why I can speak convincingly that there are not many security guards that would have the qualification. And preparing our people, systems that prepare our people will be systems that ensure that we can be rolling out this training. We speak about a national training initiative, that we can be rolling out this kind of training under such an initiative to make sure that these categories of workers can go there and compete. And in a case of a security firm that is a regional security firm, would not have to worry that their jobs now are threatened, where other people have received the training and where these people could likely come into Barbados now because they have the CVQ in security and can be registered, that they can come in and take jobs of people who we have not invested in sufficiently enough to ensure that they're trained up enough to compete. Then, in that particular area, it makes me recall a call from a workers' representative made some 5 years ago in the very field of security, where there are people performing the same function, a function of a security guard or security officer, but there are organizations choosing to call them by a different name. Same functions, but calling them by a different title, only so that they can pay below the standard wage that is expected for a security guard. I only won't call the name of the organization because they've told me that with a change in the leadership, there's a change in the attitude, which might suggest that this problem will be corrected. But in instances where the problem is not corrected and a security guard is being called a steward, only so that you can pay them $3.50 less than the going rate, the market rate, it means that that person does not have the opportunity for free movement under this. Although that person is performing the same duties, they're not called a guard. They're called a steward. So tomato isn't tomato, and so it can't apply in these cases. We must fix the situation of the minimum wage, as we heard earlier, because if a playing field is level in areas such as this, we don't have to worry about people taking advantage and paying below. We know what is an acceptable floor below which wages should not fall. And then there's the other issue of casualizing the workforce. Government must not find itself in a position where it can be accused of this, and must not allow the private sector either to continue its efforts of casualizing the workforce. What do I mean by this? Sending home people who are in fully employed positions and bringing back people to do the same jobs, but calling them contract workers, just so you can avoid having to pay pensions and medical expenses and allowances and so on. And that is something that we're watching very closely. This government must not allow this accusation to be one that is squarely placed on its shoulders, and it must not allow under its administration, through the Ministry of Labor, that private sector companies are undermining these provisions to casualize the workforce, because what we would be doing rather than lifting our standards and keeping our standards high, we will be lowering our standards, perhaps so we may reflect more squarely with those of our Caribbean neighbors, who many companies we hear whenever there is a suggestion of restructuring to a different Caribbean island, the main thing is because the wages are lower. So Barbados, I don't know if it is this trend where Barbados sees itself all of a sudden that we must lower our wages too, and we must lower our conditions so that we can compete. I think that Barbadians must not be pushed to look outside because working life is as bad in our country as it is in other places that have been characterized by economic turmoil, and I speak about other places in the Caribbean community. Barbados must not be defined as the place where jobs are available, but where decent jobs, which offer nationally acceptable wages, are not available. Let's not reduce our standard, Mr. President, to the ground level. I don't see that the amendments here necessarily mean that we would be reducing our standard, but one who is very attuned to what is going on in the labor market can see it daily that it seems that that is where we are going, reducing our standards to the ground level. Instead, I would hope that even within the implementation, the institutionalization of these changes, that Barbados would continue to see itself as a sovereign nation operating within the Caribbean single market and economy that is proud that it has a ceiling of benefits and exceptional terms and conditions that others would want to come here, and our people, maybe because we are in the habit of turning out very skilled people, will seek opportunities outside but wouldn't be pushed out of the labor market in Barbados to settle for situations that are as bad as. But that we will be pursuing opportunities, and we will be a country that remains the recipient of those looking for a better life within the Caribbean single market and economy. Mr. President, as a sovereign nation, my submission is that we must build upon what we have. We must improve on what we have always known and what we know today. More from me, perhaps, in another place, but for right now, I am obliged. Thank you.
Althea begins.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on this amendment to the bill. I can safely say to everyone present here that I support everything that's going on in CARICOM and what the Prime Minister, Mayor Amar Motley is doing. As many of you know, I'm the Prime Minister's Special Envoy to Suriname, and that has come about as a result of an agreement signed between Prime Minister Motley and the President of the Republic of Suriname, Desire Bouteille. And that shows you that is a real project that is showing you exactly a bilateral cooperation within the whole CARICOM. As I said before, when it was first appointed, many persons were unaware that Suriname was part of CARICOM, and just because it's a Dutch-speaking country. And it is a very good move that both countries have made in terms of the signing of that functional cooperation. As part of that agreement, the government of Suriname has leased a 20-acre trial plot for Barbadians to do agriculture. Many persons are saying that, you know, we're only 106,000 square feet of land, and there's not a lot of land that we have to work, you know, do our agricultural projects on. Suriname, by signing that Broco Pondo project for cooperation, has more or less extended its lands to Barbados to farm. We are going to be exporting some black-belly sheep to them, where we would be helping them improve their stock and as well as increasing our stock of black-belly sheep. The one thing that Suriname has that Barbados has in short supply is water. And part of the whole agricultural project, farmers are being encouraged, and we will be briefing these farmers very shortly who have expressed an interest in working in Suriname. So this obviously is improving employment, improving the employment opportunities. And one of the greatest advantages of this Broco Ponder project, if we can grow a lot of our food in Suriname, where we have a lot of water and a lot of land, we will reduce our food import bill. So there are many steps that the government is taking with respect to CARICOM in terms of the free movement. It is free movements on both sides, because our farmers will be going there and they will be working the land there, and they will be able to increase and improve their crop production, and so that they can ship their food back to Barbados. And I think that that is a plus for this Broco Ponder project. I had to rush out just now to a meeting because I have met with several business persons in Barbados, in all sectors in Barbados, who want to conduct business in Suriname, because people didn't realize that, hey, you can go to Suriname or Guyana, because the government also is cooperating with Guyana, as many of you persons might know, because the fundamentals between Suriname and Guyana are the same. So we're working both in Guyana and Suriname. And these persons would be able to plant watermelons, pineapples, limes, lemons, corn, sorghum. Their laboratories there that are internationally accredited will be putting some of their yam, the nappy yam, into tissue culture to multiply the yam production for Barbados, because we eat a lot of yam here. So what I'm saying is that because you don't hear things advertised, it doesn't mean that the government is not doing anything in relation to agriculture, sports, tourism, and many other areas, because this Broco Ponder project crisscrosses many functional areas of government. I have to meet with some of my senators in here in terms of the portfolios that they cover as part of the Broco Ponder project, because it's a very, very wide project. The Prime Minister is hoping that this summer, about 1,000 students can go to Suriname on somewhat similar to an exchange program, and they will be learning many different things. And as a result of this project, we might have students in the future who will be able to speak Dutch from Barbados. And doing business with Suriname, I'm saying to my fellow senators here, language is not a problem, because the Surinamese know English very well. It is for Barbadians to learn Dutch now. They have also requested to have assistance from Barbados in building up their tourism project, their tourism program. Right now, obviously, it's ecotourism, while we have sports and leisure, and they would like. They want so many things from us. They want coaches to come and help them coach in cricket, football, road tennis. This project is very, very wide, and this is CARICOM. Are we talking CARICOM here? So when people think that it is just the free movement of people coming into Barbados, they are totally unaware of the amount of business persons that I've dealt with so far who have started to do business in Suriname. And this is within CARICOM. And as long as this project can expand, in a couple years' time, you will see the Barbados economy, because this is the end result that we're looking for, you know. The Barbados economy is going to improve significantly by doing business with our Caribbean neighbors. And this is the one thing that people have to understand. It is not just that people want to leave a legacy. They're leaving the legacy for Barbados, not for themselves. And I'm saying to you that many people are very, very, very excited about this Broco Pounder project. Now, as you know, AgriFest is coming up at the end of the month. We have invited their Minister of Agriculture and his technocrats, and they will be coming up to Barbados for AgriFest. And they will be bringing a lot of their fruits and vegetables on display, and we'll be speaking, obviously, to their counterparts here and improving the relationships in CARICOM. And this is what the Prime Minister is doing, improving business and functional cooperation and relationships within CARICOM. So if that is the legacy you're talking about, it's a great legacy. It's a very good thing that she's doing, and I'm saying that we have to embrace it. In terms of the laboratories in Suriname, they are able to export, especially fish, to the European Union. They are accredited. And if Barbadians join forces with the labs and so on in Suriname, Versalco, all those big businesses that they have in Suriname, we will be able to learn and improve our products and be able to get our fish and our meats not only into the EU, but into Africa as well, because the Africans are interested in our chicken. So these will help us with our international accreditation. And this must be a great thing for Barbados. It is a great thing for Barbados. So, Mr. President, I don't want to be very long on this, but I just wanted to let the Senate know that this is what the government is doing with respect to this Broco Pounder plan of action for Suriname in terms of the culture around their independence time. Red plastic bag and a couple of our Calypsonians went down and performed for the president and their independence, and they hopefully should be coming here for our crop over. So be doing exchanges at sports level, the business level, at the agricultural level, at the educational level. So there are lots of things that we're doing, and hopefully we will be inviting their media here to Barbados to come and video Barbados, to show Suriname what Barbados is, and they and our GIS, as Minister Moore will tell you, will be going to Suriname and videoing Suriname and show Barbadians, because the whole aspect of this project is to educate the, as she will say, the ordinary people in both countries about each other. If we don't learn about each other, we can't integrate with each other, and a lot of suspicion will come. So we hope that as part of this Broco Pounder project for cooperation, we will be educating our Barbadians, and we will also be educating the Surinamese about the two countries. But of course, as many of you know, there's a rich history of between Barbados and Suriname, because the Lord Willoughby Tavern, as you know, that is where the history began in terms of the relationship in 1620 between Barbados and Suriname. But in the intervening time, there would have been a falling away of the relationships. So what the Prime Minister has sought to do block by block, start with Suriname, you do Guyana, and do bilateral agreements with these countries. And there's no better way of integrating by doing it bit by bit by bit. So Mr. President, I want to say that I support this bill, and I'm obliged to you for giving me these few minutes for speaking. Thank you, sir.
Senator Rommel Springer, now your turn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to lend my voice in support of this bill as well. And to say that This bill, Mr. President, is just as much a debate on functional cooperation as it is a bill to amend the categories of persons who are eligible to free movement throughout the region and the extension of their stay and of their families in the countries that they choose to work throughout the region, throughout the Caribbean community. As I said, it's mainly about functional cooperation. And simply put, functional cooperation refers to the sharing of services, the engaging of activities towards a common goal with a view of perhaps creating some synergies that would reduce costs, reduce effort. And we've seen these types of synergies, this type of cooperation, perhaps throughout the entire history of the Caribbean. You've seen it in transportation, we've seen it in culture, education, telecommunications, we've seen it in health, and so on and so forth. And of course, functional cooperation predates any institution, whether social, political, that exists in the Caribbean today. And I'm glad that Senator Wiggins mentioned Suriname, Guyana, because it would have been back in the 18th century where we would have seen perhaps one of the first cases of the movement of skilled labor from one Caribbean country to another Caribbean country, or from Caribbean islands to one country in particular. This country I'm speaking of right now is Guyana. Last week, Saturday, Mr. President, I attended a graduation ceremony at Erdeston Teachers Training College, and one of the graduates, her name was, I don't recall her first name, but her surname was Graves Sandy. And that reminded me, Mr. President, of a period in Caribbean history when Graves Sandy, I think it's Lawrence Storm Van Graves Sandy, he was the commander of the Essequibo region in Guyana. I think he was appointed back in 1742 or so. And he would have tried to encourage the settlement of these areas, which at the time belonged to the Netherlands, to Holland. He tried to encourage persons to come from the Netherlands from Europe to come to Essequibo and to settle and to build out the plantation economy, to build out the plantations that they were focused on at that period of time. He couldn't manage to encourage, could not get those Dutch persons to come to Guyana to work on these plantations. So what did he do? He turned to his Caribbean brothers. He turned to the British. He turned to the British, who were established plantation owners within the region, and he asked for help. He wanted them to come to Guyana and to build out the agricultural project that they had at the time. Very similar to what is happening today. All right? And what's interesting about that period is that in less than 20 years after asking the British to come and assist, there were more British plantation owners in Guyana than there were Dutch plantation owners. And something interesting happened too. I know that Senator Wiggins would have mentioned that English is not going to be an issue for our people when we finally decide to go to Suriname and take up the opportunities that are there in waiting for us. One of the things that happened, and as a linguist, I think I should speak to it, is that when the British came, they brought the English-speaking slaves. And those English-speaking enslaved persons, they taught English to the Dutch enslaved persons who were in Essequibo at that point in time. And in turn, those enslaved persons, those Dutch enslaved persons, those Guyanese enslaved persons, they then taught English to their counterparts in Suriname. And that's why today, even in Suriname, there's a English-based Creole, the lingua franca in Suriname is English-based. That's Shanantongo. It's English-based, so it's based in English, so they all speak English. Speak a variety of English that persons can understand. And so I just raised that because it was mentioned that integration and deeper cooperation with us and Suriname and parts of South America, it's not a new thing. It happened 300 plus years ago, and it can happen again, and it worked then. We went there, we brought our skilled workers, our know-how, and we were able to develop those, the plantation economy there. And I'm sure that we will go back there in a short time, and we would develop the plantation economy, the agricultural sector, the sports sector, the educational sector. Wherever they need our help, we will go there and we would develop them again in the future. So I just wanted to make that point very, very quickly. But as I said, integration amongst Caribbean people is nothing new. It's been happening. University, for example, is one good example of functional cooperation. Persons who would have attended the university over the years would have been exposed to the Caribbean brothers, would have been exposed to various cultures, various people. I for one, grew up in a rural part of Barbados, and the only persons from the other parts of the Caribbean that I would have met were agricultural workers who would have come to work on the plantations here from St. Vincent and St. Lucia and those places. Never met any Guyanese, any Antiguans, any persons from St. Kitts. All these things, these persons I met for the first time when I attended university. So I had some insight as to how other Caribbean persons, how they talk, how they function, how they see Barbados, how they saw their own countries. So there was that exposure. So right now, for persons moving across the Caribbean, there's no culture shock with the free movement. There's no culture shock because we know each other. We have experienced each other for years, many years. And we've seen institutions develop within the region that have worked, of which university is just one example. CXC is another example. CXC is another example of a regional body that works, that helped to develop that human resource that sets our young people, readies our young people for university education, for higher education, for higher human development. So these are just examples of where we have come together and we have worked together. In the area of research, we have also seen collaborations between our Caribbean people. I can think about works by Hilary Beckles and Vereen Shepherd. I mean, I did history as my first degree, and we've seen a number of works where these two giants of Caribbean academia will have come together and produce works that tell the story of the Caribbean person. And not only Hilary Beckles, we have seen Richard Alsop, Janet Alsop, who documented they both from Guyana, spent a lot of their working life here in Barbados. But they will have documented the language and the culture of the Caribbean people, of the Caribbean experience. We've seen Alvin Thompson, another Guyanese. We've done some work, Caribbean history, and telling the story of the slave experience in the Caribbean. We've been working together for a long time, and the thing is, had it not for these persons, Walter Rodney, another Guyanese, who would have not come into the space, university, under the umbrella of the university, and working together to tell the story of the black experience in the Caribbean would have never been told. Because, I mean, before my time, but I'm sure in some persons in here time, you would have only heard of the European side of the experience, of the transatlantic slave trade. You would have only heard of the British side, the French side, the Spanish side, the Portuguese side, the Dutch side, but you would never have heard of the African side of it. And through collaborations, through working together, through regional integration, we have seen the production of work that tells the story, tells the Caribbean stories. And I believe it's through institutions such as the university that have given these persons the necessary skills and the voice and the platform that they could speak about our lives here in the Caribbean. And those are just a few. I mean, Eric Williams, our Nobel laureates, Derek Walker, Safa Lewis, another a St. Lucian, but who lived and worked almost his entire life in Barbados. In fact, a lot of the work that he's known for came out of his time here in Barbados. Worked at the university. That's why the center is named after him, at the University of the West Indies, Cape Hill campus. So we've seen the coming together of skilled persons. These were skilled persons. He had to be skilled. He was a skilled economist. For a long time, working together to improve the livelihood, improve the living condition, improve the quality of life for people within the Caribbean, improve the consciousness in terms of what Hilary Beckles and what Vereen Shepard and all those historians like Alvin Thompson and such, like Elsa Govay and those persons have done for the Caribbean. We have seen that together because there's no individual country in this region that can claim that they can do it, they can go about it on their own, or they can do it on their own. It had to be a collection of people from various regions telling the story and bringing those skills to bear so that we can have a well comprehensive documentation of our life here in the region. And C.L.R. James, and I don't know how many persons have heard of his work here, but whenever you talk about C.L.R. James, you've got to talk about cricket, which is another way in which persons in the Caribbean have come together, have shown that we as a people can work together. And Senator Greenidge mentioned that we can't just be, a Caribbean people when Usain Bolt was winning, or when Lara was batting. But I think cricket, more so than any other sport, has shown that if we can be true Caribbean people. I've seen people argue. I listened to Bess and Mason on the radio. I've heard people argue that this person, maybe this, say for example, Shonda Paul. I would just use Hetmar as a more common current name. It's better suited to be on the West Indies team than say, our own Kevin Stout. If you people argue because based on their skill and their performance in the middle, they were arguing that these persons from other territories in the Caribbean are more suited to be on our regional team than our own Barbadian players. It didn't matter that the guy was not a Bajan, because it was based on how skilled that person is. It's all notions of which territory insularity disappear when it comes to cricket, because it was a regional body. It was a regional thing that we all saw ourselves as being part of. So sport, and by way of cricket, it's just an example of regional integration. And I think, and there are more. And then we get back to where this bill is taking us. But you have to just set the tone, just to give you an idea that even though there are persons who would resist this, they need to understand we've been working together and we've been growing and becoming stronger as a result of working together for years, for centuries. Now, if we go back to the period of Suriname. Also, we have seen closer relations in the area of health. Right now, the world is going through is in the grip of a health crisis. A health crisis. And if there's no clear example they can think of that will show us that we cannot, as individuals, function on our own. We don't have the expertise. We don't have the facilities to ensure that we can weather this particular crisis without the help of our brothers in Trinidad, in Jamaica, with sharing of knowledge, sharing of skills. So we need each other. We really need each other. And the skills, if they're not here, we can find those skills in the region. And this health crisis that we are in now is just an example of how badly we need each other. I'm glad that you mentioned agriculture, because food security now, that's the issue. We talk about food security. We talk about two main things: food security and disaster preparedness. Two areas that we need each other. Food security. The reason that many of our ancestors and many of our predecessors would have flocked to Suriname and to Guyana is because the lands in Barbados were depleted. They were not suited to grow the food, or they were capable of growing the types of. At that time, it was cane was the main crop for export. Cash was the main source driver of the economy. Today, we can hardly feed ourselves based on the type of amount of agriculture that's done in Barbados. Our import bill is too high. So if we can find ways of working with other persons in other territories that we can have acreage of land, acres and acres of land to work on, then that works for both our benefits. We would benefit from having the ability to grow our food in a nearby territory, and the benefits that will accrue from that, and they will have the benefits of our expertise in terms of building out their agricultural sector. In terms of disaster preparedness, which is another area we have to work very closely together on, we've seen, I've mentioned it before here in this Senate, we have seen the intensity of hurricanes and the impact they've had on our region. Our Prime Minister made it clear that, she has said it on more one occasion, that we are on the front line of climate change. And we are all vulnerable in that regard to hurricanes, to droughts, to earthquakes. Any of these natural disasters can wipe out the economy, can wipe out any one of the Caribbean countries. And in a situation like that, we're going to have to depend on each other in the same way that Antigua, St. Martin, and Dominica, and those territories who would have been impacted in 2017, had to depend on us for their security. So there's no getting around the fact that we have to find ways of working together. And this thought about, you don't want people from other countries in your country. All that goes through the window when you find yourself in a crisis. When you find yourself in a situation where you are desperately in need of help. So rather than wait for a crisis to come, it's best that we put the mechanisms in place to ensure that people can move around, skills can move around, knowledge can move around. You can have that transfer, and we work together towards strengthening our integration process. Now, as I close, I just want to address something that was said, but I believe it was Senator Greenwich earlier when he spoke about the validity of the CVQs and MVQs. Now, I might have been too young to take notice, but I'm sure that when CXCs, when they were first introduced, there was some pushback from the general public. People didn't think that examining body that came out of the Caribbean would even be anywhere close to the level or the standard of maybe the London base or any outside overseas based examining body. So persons felt, that they weren't ready, they weren't too confident about it, they were very skeptical, obviously emanated from the Caribbean, from amongst our own. So that skepticism was there before, and it will be there now. So I'm not surprised that persons would question the validity of the CVQs and the MVQs. But the thing about CVQs and MVQs are they're competency-based certifications. They're based on your level of competency. Yes? And like CXCs and maybe to some degrees, university degrees, you can't fake competency. You either have the skill set or you don't. And if you present yourself on a job and you don't have the necessary skills, it's going to tell on you very early on. You can't fake skills. In the same way you can fake intelligence. In the same way you can fake intelligence. I don't know what Senator Caswell Franklin is grinning about down there. You can't fake competency. You can't fake competence. Yes? And I can speak about CVQs, at least mention the folks saying the things that I normally say. Whenever I get the opportunity, Mr. President, to speak at graduations or prize-giving ceremonies to young people who have just graduated with CVQs, I like to remind them how important a CVQ is to the average man in the street, the small man that Senator Moore alluded to earlier. Because what it does, it gives those persons, like the butcher, the needleworker, those persons who would have been over the years honing their skills and become experts in the area, but with nothing to show for it. No paper. You understand, to show for it. It gave them an opportunity to be certified and to be recognized as a skilled person, not only in Barbados, but any part of this Caribbean community, they could be recognized as a skilled person. And I think that means a lot. You will be surprised for a person who have never done any formal, a person who have no formal certification, how important something like that means to you. When you know you are skilled, you're just as good as the other guy, but you don't have anything on paper to prove it. You don't have anything to get you into the room, get you at the table to sit down and to explain yourself, or get you through the door to go and prove yourself. Yes? So these things, that is important like that. And it does a lot in terms of your integrity as well. I mean, in terms of your self-esteem as well. Yeah? I'd like to remind young people going into the world of work, and any person for that matter, that these CVQs, they enhance and they improve your employability. With this certification, one can demand, simply put, more money, a higher wage, because they have something to back up their demand. You have something to back up your demand for more money. Also, I think, and it's going to happen too, it's going to happen. Certainly, if I were to speak of my vision for education in Barbados, it would be at some point that competency-based education, the profile of it is raised or elevated to the same level as traditional academic education. That's what I want to see. That's what I've been pushing from the time I came to the Ministry of Education. The whole idea of raising the prestige of technical and vocational training. that a person who has a certificate, a CVQ level 1, level 2, level 3, believes that he is just as qualified as a person who has a degree. We have to dispel this notion that this is second-rate education, second chance education, somehow second to academic certification. We have to dispel that notion. I would be the first person to say that a person who's skilled in any area is just as competent as a person who has a degree. I spoke to some young persons who were graduating from an ECA program a few weeks ago, and I reminded them that their role going forward in terms of our food security is going to be extremely important. Of course, they have to the challenge of convincing those within the older persons within the community that a certificate in agriculture is just as important, or could be just as important as a law degree. By reminding them that I was at the last, I guess it was ceremony, passing of the bar. I think we would have added 68 new lawyers. 68? Some number, 60 something. 65? I stand corrected, 65. But you have so many lawyers in Barbados now who, in some cases, they're lawyers, they have a law degree, but they have to go back to the job, whatever job they were doing. If they were bank tellers before, they have to go back to being bank tellers. Because there are just too many of them. And the reality is, those persons with the skills, those persons with various skills are the persons who are making money in Barbados. Those are the persons who will be driving the economy going forward. You have to remind them they may have to feed a hungry lawyer at some point. It'd be unfortunate, but that may very well be the case. The hairdresser, the person who makes the cake, the baker, you need a worker. Those are the persons who are going to be making the money. Those are the persons who are going to be driving the economy of Barbados. So you have to remind young people often as possible that their certification, their CVQ, their decision to go into non-traditional areas, to move away from the high-profile academic certification to competency-based certification, puts them in just as good a stead as a person who has a degree. These are things that I constantly say to young people because it's important that they know and they feel that what they're doing is going to be important. It's important and it's going to be important to the development of this country and important to the development of their own self-development. So in closing, Mr. President, I'm going to close now. I just want to say that even as we speak of ways to enhance regional integration, I'm aware that there are persons who believe that the process has not been seamless. We are aware it's not been seamless and it will continue not to be seamless, but we have to continue working at it. We have to, if we are to strengthen our integration movement, we have to keep on working and pushing forward with amendments such as this one to ensure the free movement of our people throughout the region so we can benefit from the skills and the knowledge that exists throughout the entire region. And as I said, as I start, I fully support this particular amendment. And with those few words, Mr. President, I'm obliged.
Thank you, Senator Springer. Senator Rudy Grant. It's now your turn, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. This debate is not one that is contentious in any way, and I certainly have no intention of detaining the chamber today. Just to make a very few points. The leader of government business did make reference to the fact that this maybe has its genesis in the revised Treaty of Chagaramas. There was, sir, in 1989, I believe, the Granans Declaration that gave further impetus to the free movement of a certain category of workers. And of course, the amendment today is one that is very simple, seeking to expand that. I only, sir, want to suggest that CARICOM, just as CARICOM member states, needs to look in a more aggressive manner at its implementation. Very often the heads of governments, sir, sit and they set the policy for the region, and it's accepted, but there's a slow process of implementation, certainly with all of the member countries, and we really have to seek to ensure that we use a more aggressive approach to bring the benefits of integration to Caribbean people. There can be no doubt that an integral part of the CARICOM single market and economy relates to the movement of people. But the practical aspect of it sometimes is challenging. Mr. President, I do still hear occasionally of stories of persons that persons encounter with immigration, going from one member country to another. And we really have to seek to ensure that we are able to eliminate those types of attitudes, because we have to recognize that we are one people. The truth is, sir, that I observe CARICOM people outside of the region. I've seen CARICOM people in Canada, in Toronto specifically, in England, in London specifically, in the USA, in New York, in Atlanta. And the truth is that CARICOM people tend to have a strong affinity and a strong relationship with each other outside of the Caribbean. It seems to me, sir, that it is oftentimes stronger outside than it is inside. In fact, sir, as I speak, I remember there is a Calypsonian. I believe the Calypsonian is Mark Fingal, that sang a song, All Them Wife No Bajan. It was Mark Fingal. And he said something like, Sandy wife, no Bajan. Owen wife, no Bajan. Tom wife, no Bajan. And Johnny wife, no Bajan. I remember the song well. And I reference that only to say that I believe, sir, and I am obviously, sir, not of that era and of that time. But I believe, sir, what was happening is that a lot of those persons referred to, those persons were studying overseas and had the opportunity to practice real CARICOM integration. And that was CARICOM integration really at work. But the point that I'm getting to, sir, is that I think it is important for us to bring the reality of integration to the Caribbean people, and that we seek to address the slow reform process which we have. I also think, sir, that it is very important that we are able to leverage the human resources of the region. I stand here, sir, proudly as the first CEO of the Grenada Tourism Authority. You know, sir, there can only be one first, and that first then in the history books will be Rudy Grant. The truth is, though, the transformation of the Grenada Tourist Board to the Grenada Tourism Authority involved a number of Barbadians, involved a lady, Mayor Hines, Dr. Kerry Hall, involved Noah Lynch, and it so happened that I was the first CEO. And I reference that, sir, to suggest that there are opportunities for Caribbean people to help build Caribbean economies. Sir, you know, we sir, left Barbados. Barbadians left. We went to England. We went to Canada. We went to the US. We went to Panama. They helped to build other countries' economies. The time has come, sir, where we must recognize that we have to help to build our own CARICOM economies as well. And we have to get rid of the insularity that exists. You know, the truth is, sir, that, as I said before, when you travel and you hear another CARICOM voice, you're happy to know that that person is there. And I've said in this chamber before that no one owes us anything. We really have to find the solutions and the strength within ourselves. Senator Greenidge would have made reference earlier today to the Federation. And again, I am not of that era. I believe the Federation, sir, would have been between maybe 1958 to 1962, 61, 62. We all know of the history of the Federation. We know, sir, that there were, I believe, 11 countries that agreed to participate in the Federation. We all know, sir, that the largest of those 11 countries decided to go on their own. We all know of the famous statement of a late Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago that one from 10 leaves not, and the Federation broke up. We obviously, sir, are not at the stage of a federation, but I want to say this, that I think the time has come for there to be serious consideration given to the political realities, and for us, sir, to look to see how we can really deepen the integration to ensure that we function as one people, because our success and our future depends on our collaborating and our working together. Sir, I'm going to end by referencing, yes, but if sir, my colleagues wish me to talk, then I can. I thought, sir, that the colleagues were interested in things, but if they wish me to talk, well, I will talk some more, sir. There are issues, sir, within the CARICOM region that we have to seek to ensure that we are better able to collaborate on. And if there's one thing that comes to mind that is of significant concern, it relates, sir, to crime in the region. It relates, sir, to the issue of drugs. It relates to the issue of guns. And I think, sir, it is fair to say that it is a regional issue. And therefore, there needs to be a stronger regional approach to deal with this very critical matter. Because we tell the rest of the world that the Caribbean is a place that you should come to. Most of our economies, sir, depend on tourism. And we speak about the safe and the secure environment. But yet every day, literally, it seems that we are confronted with some now serious crime challenges. And in order to ensure that we continue to keep this region safe, I think it is critical that at the regional level, there's also an approach taken as to how we will deal with the issues of crime and the issues of drugs and guns in this region. Sir, the illegal, of course, I heard the aside, the illegal ones, not the legal ones. The issue of crime, the issue of drugs have the potential of destroying any progress that we may make. And so we have to treat seriously to that issue. Sir, I'm going to close now, unless I get another prompt that I should go forward. To just reference a remark that was made before. No, I was closing before, but I was asked to go on. Just to say, sir, that reference was made to earlier in the debate to the functioning of the Prime Minister and the fact that words to the effect remembered. Sir, I can't quite recall. I think it was Senator Franklin, I believe, that would have said that the Prime Minister will go down as being known as the person for imposing all of these taxes on Barbadians and all of that. Let me say this, sir. You know, sometimes there are people who that glass, if it was that glass there of water, someone may look at it and say that it is half empty. Sir, I prefer to look at it and say that it is half full. The reality is, sir, that Barbados was on the precipice of disaster. The reality is, sir, that Barbados was in a situation where the foreign exchange was being eroded. The reality is that Barbados was in a situation that if serious decisions were not immediately taken, that we could be today, sir, in some serious trouble, where we would be in a position of not being able to pay our bills. I say to you, sir, thank God that we have been able to have a Prime Minister that seriously addresses the issues. A Prime Minister that seriously determines that she will take decisions, even those tough decisions that have to be made in order to safeguard the future of this country. Sir, that is extremely important. Sir, my expectation is that there will be new life brought to CARICOM. I believe, sir, you know, and this is, sir, no disrespect to those older heads that have been there for some time, who through their years of experience and maturity and their competence can help guide younger persons. But, sir, we all know that there is a time when you have to make way for a younger generation, a younger set of people who bring a different perspective, who bring new vigor, who bring new energy, who bring new life, and that is critical. And therefore my expectation is, sir, that the new chairman of CARICOM, our Prime Minister, the Honourable Mia Motley, will, in the same manner that she has aggressively and seriously and professionally sought to deal with the challenges and the problems that Barbados face, that she also will take that vigor and energy to the level of CARICOM, and that she will seek to ensure that there are benefits that are achieved for the CARICOM people. I have every confidence that our Prime Minister will lead, and will lead effectively and properly. Sir, with those few words, I support this bill.
Mr. Deputy President, I rise in full support of this bill. I'm not going to be long. I was actually not sure if I would speak on it or not. But I decided just to make 2 quick points, because I think everybody in this chamber and some outside know that I am an unrepentant regionalist. So I don't need to rise to support the bill. I think before I rose, everyone knew that I clearly supported the bill and would have supported it no matter what, because of how I feel about regionalism. How I feel about regionalism and the Caribbean. Now, I heard you, sir, Mr. Deputy President, speak about the teachers and all the other individuals who for years, Barbadians, have moved all around the Caribbean, working as teachers, of course as policemen. If you go to most of the Caribbean islands, you would see there are a large number of individuals there, even currently, that are policemen who are of Barbadian descent. St. Lucia is a good example. If you go to the south of St. Lucia, areas like Viewfort, you will hear names like Brathwaite and those type of names that we recognize as Barbadian names, are names like Aline, and they're not names of French origin, where a lot of people in that country, their names clearly are of that origin. Now, but besides those category of individuals, what I'm really rising to speak on is that the opening up of new individuals being able to move around the Caribbean is important. We know about the policemen, the nurses, the teachers. That's been going on for a very long time. We also know about people within the legal sphere. I remember clearly at one time, the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court at the Appellate Division, 2 of the judges were Barbadians, and the Chief Justice, was from Jamaica. Now, as you know, the OECS, and you know which islands make up the OECS, but of the 3 people at the Appellate Division, 2 Barbadians and a Jamaican at one time. So, and Barbadians have been in the legal sphere throughout the Caribbean at all levels. We have some here back now. I won't call their names, but we see them in the newspaper, who were within the legal sphere here, and as magistrates and registrars and what have you, and then moved on to become judges all over the Caribbean, not just within the CARICOM construct, but also in the islands such as Bermuda, Cayman Islands, and those islands that are overseas territories. And some of them were not just at the Supreme Court level, but some were at the appeals court level, where they were brought in to do the appeals for these cases. And when you look within the legal sphere right through the Caribbean, you see even today, to this very day, you can go to any of these islands and you will see them. I myself have been fortunate enough to have worked in some of these Caribbean territories, and I will say without any hesitation that the movement of Caribbean people, this bill is not just a benefit or a bill that's saying we are now allowing people to come to Barbados, but it allows Barbadians, which is the important point that you have to understand, it allows Barbadians to also move and go elsewhere. I heard my colleagues say there are too many lawyers in Barbados. I don't know if there are too many lawyers in Barbados. I don't know. But certainly lawyers have and not just lawyers, but other individuals now have the opportunity to also go to other Caribbean islands and work. And that is what's important. It allows the opportunity for people to be able to feed themselves, feed their families, and to get needed income coming in. And it also allows us as a people to become closer as a region. Not just with sports or things, but with this opportunity. And the more we increase it, and the more we integrate the Caribbean islands, the better off we are. We have to remember, it took Europe from 1948 to integrate. Now, and well, I won't go down the Brexit road, but the reality is, it is not an easy process. But what is important about it is that it's a necessary process. We are all very small jurisdictions. Most Caribbean islands have small populations, besides a few that have over 1 million people. Most Caribbean islands don't even have 500,000 people. Some of them don't even have 200,000. Barbados actually has one of the larger populations, and we're just around about 300,000, give or take. So if you think about it logically, and you recognize the size of the world and the size of what you're competing against, or with, I should say, not against, but with, you clearly will understand that you need to have economies of scale, which means obviously integration. It's long overdue, and it's something that needs to be done, and I'm sure that this is just another step in the right direction, because it brings additional individuals into the whole scope of being able to move around with their skills. Now, for many years, when I was much younger, because I'm not so young again. But when I was much younger, I remember these are days when Caribbean doctors or those who wanted to do medicine, they would go and study in Jamaica. I mean, some people here would not even know this, but because there was no school of medicine at Cave Hill. So if you want to be a doctor, most of them went to Jamaica, maybe Trinidad, but primarily Jamaica. And then from there, they would then go and do their other aspects of their medical degree in other Caribbean islands. Sometimes they would do it in the same Jamaica, they may go to the Bahamas, what have you. And then the same thing with law. The people used to come to Barbados for law school. They would go to Cave Hill, and then they would go back to Jamaica. If Jamaicans come to Cave Hill, they had a lot of Jamaicans that came to Cave Hill and did law. What is so important about this is this. The same way in which we as individuals many years ago, I think Mr. President and Mr. Deputy President, you all have moved around. I do remember the days when we as Barbadians would go extra-regionally for education. But now we had Caribbean people move around within the region for their education at the University of the West Indies. It was a benefit to this region. It allowed us to get to know each other in a way that probably would not have occurred did we not have that opportunity and ability. Sometimes I think, progress sometimes may not always be the best thing when it comes to something like integration. So now we're stuck in our own little like shells, our own little spaces. So Bajans going to do medicine in Barbados, the Jamaicans staying in Jamaica and all that. Now, is that good or is that bad? It has its negatives, and it really does. And one of the negatives for me is that you're now talking about an economic requirement on each of these areas to provide the education within those sectors. It also then sometimes stymies your ability to interact with others, because it's always good to interact with others to get other ideas, other ways of looking at life, the understanding of the world. Some of the most intuitive people that I have met and seen are people who have had the ability to be exposed to other cultures. It is important to be able to see something else besides just what's in my neighborhood. Just what's in my neighborhood. Sometimes even within our own Barbados, that has become a problem for us, where people can only tell you what happens in their parish, in their neighborhood. Some Bajans tell you, St. Lucie, River Bay, I don't even know where that is. They tell you they've never been, and they live here. Why? Because they don't get the opportunity to go there. There's no reason for them to go there. So they just know there. So without that continuous exposure to different ways of life, different foods, different cultures, different music, different everything, so you can get a broader idea of what the world is like, it becomes sometimes not perhaps necessarily the best thing. And sometimes that in itself stymies your whole integration process. And I'm saying anything negative at all about the University of West Indies system. I cannot, because the University of West Indies is is in the top 500 universities in the entire world, which in itself is a huge achievement, and they should be applauded for it, because I don't think people understand how many universities you have worldwide. But the reality is that, and I'm not speaking long, so I just want to make that point, that I really believe that this is a true opportunity once again for Barbadians to be able to move around within the Caribbean construct and see other opportunities and perhaps have other opportunities. You heard Mr. Deputy Speaker, you spoke about earlier a gentleman who went down as a boat builder and then ended up setting up his own fish processing plant. I don't know if he's one of the ones that taught them how to bone flying fish, because the only place in the Caribbean I see people filleting fish is in Barbados. Most of the time when I go other places, the fish still hasn't all the bones. So I don't know if he was one of the ones, but clearly that is in itself a skill that we have certainly taught our neighbors down there to the south, because I know that flying fish, yes, some of them do take a vacation and go that way at certain times of the year, but I don't think that their knowledge of flying fish is ours. Now, so the last thing I want to talk about is that within the Caribbean itself, we look at some place like the OECS, and I want to speak about them specifically. The OECS has a common currency. So all these islands were able to get together, and they have, for many years, they have a common currency. They also have a common legal system, a judicial system. So regardless of what country you live in, whether you live in Grenada, you live in Antigua, St. Kitts, wherever, it is the same court system. So it allows you certainly to have clarity and the economies of scale that you have within these small jurisdictions. I mean, some islands only have maybe 40, 50,000 people. It allows you to share those resources, and it has worked exceptionally well for them. I don't think people can really. You can look at the OECS judicial system, and you know that it is a good system. It is, in fact, in my view, a better system than some first world countries, because there is a surety, in my view, that you will get a certain level of legal clarity, let me just put that, in the decisions that they make in that system. So, and then besides their common currency, they have a common central bank. We know that the OECS central bank located in St. Kitts is a central bank, and a central bank, I'm sure Senator Adams, who is more versed within the areas of economics and finance and capital investments, will speak better on this than I can. But certainly a bank that is a strong bank, and one that has clearly shown that it doesn't have some of the issues that many other institutions may have in terms of their ability to have their reserves at an acceptable level and things of that type. So we look at a combination of small islands, and they're small not in geography, but in populations. But because clearly Dominica is way larger than Barbados, so is St. Lucia. But these are islands with smaller populations than ours, but they have all come together, and they have been able to maintain two important aspects of their whole existence, of their economy, because of their central bank and common currency, and of course their judicial system, because their ability to then have that as a surety as to what will happen when you move around within those islands. Imagine, if you're in Antigua, it doesn't make a difference if your home bank is in St. Kitts, because it's the same bank in Antigua and it's the same currency. So you don't have to run looking for foreign exchange because I have to travel and go to St. Kitts. It's the same currency. Yeah? Now, and right through the system, so right up to appellate division, the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court is what it is for the Eastern Caribbean, the OECS islands. Now, is that a good thing? Yes, of course it is. Should we as a Caribbean people be looking to perhaps move in a direction where we have a common currency? Perhaps we should. I mean, only the economies can tell you for sure, and I don't purport to be one. But I look at other areas, as I said in my opening remarks, Mr. Deputy President, such as Europe. And one can see the benefits that were derived there in Europe, especially in instances where there were some countries that perhaps were not doing as well as others, but they were able to get assistance and benefits from those other countries that were certainly doing better than them, so that it stops some of them from maybe a collapse or maybe a further degradation of their lives of their citizens. So these are the things that we, Mr. Deputy President, should be looking at when we speak about integration. It has to be a clear regional movement and a clear process that we are going to be taking as a people in that direction. Because Once people can move around freely, it then gives us the opportunity to have different ideas, because no one country can know it all, not even big developed countries. I mean, when you look at some places in the United States and you look at areas such as technical and technology areas, it's not Americans that are working in that industry, are they? They have some, but have a whole set of people in that industry that are from Asian countries, whether it's India, China, Japan, what have you. And we see it, and we know it. So I'm just saying that I am 100% in support of this for those two reasons. I wish that we did not have so much, that we had more movement even at the level of the university system. I thought it was a good thing. I don't know if it would ever go back that way, because they say sometimes that you just keep moving ahead, you should never look backwards. But it's not a question of looking backwards. Sometimes it's a question of what makes the best economic sense for each of these countries. And certainly in the case of labor sources and labor resources, this bill is certainly a step in the right direction, and it gives categories of workers, both Barbadians and otherwise, the ability to move around and to be able to certainly expand their knowledge and to certainly enrich their own lives, whether in a financial sense or a sense of the ability to see something different than what would have existed within their own territories. And so, Mr. President, I said it would not be long, and I'm not going to be. And so with those few words, I am, as I said, 100% in support of this bill, an unrepentant regionalist. And with those few words, I'm obliged to you.
Thank you, Senator Moore. We now have Senator Maynard, who I think may be the final speaker on this particular topic. Where to jump?
Senator, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I too will be brief, in keeping with the post-lunch session. My colleague, Senator Franklin, called on all of us to support this bill. So it is indeed Valentine's. Mr. President, most of my colleagues who spoke today spoke about the positive things that will happen with this amendment. But no one has ventured to speak about the impact on resources when people move. And I want to briefly venture into that area. But if ever there was a time when the ducks were lined up, or rather, in Barbadian terms, the black-bellied sheep were walking in a row, it is now. We've heard within 7 days of a planned meeting of the heads of CARICOM, and Senator Franklin spoke about legacy building, and we are amending the Caribbean Community Act, Cap 16A. And just before that is about to happen, we've heard of a planned important activity in medicine. We've heard that there's going to be a center of excellence, pediatric excellence in Barbados. Simultaneously with the injection of capital into cardiac care. Mr. President, if ever there was a time to be happy, it is now, because if I were a Caribbean skilled national and I want to move to another Caribbean country, I would want to know that my children have a future and they're going to a place with an excellent pediatric service that's going to be built soon, and a center of excellence. And I would want to know that if I or my elderly relatives who came with me had a heart attack, that government was going to invest large sums of money into cardiac care. So I ask, what will happen when we have movement? Will we be investing in healthcare in a continuing way? Senator Franklin spoke about why we must protect people who move. And I'm glad to see that some of the repressive policies that we had in healthcare have now been removed. That persons who work in this country and contribute will be looked after and is guaranteed. So I congratulate the government. When one is ill, there's no chance to appeal to a minister. You want to be treated as a matter of urgency. So the notion that you can appeal to someone when you're sick and wait 8 weeks will often lead to things that we don't want to talk about. So it's important that when people are migrants and they have come here legally, that we should offer them the same level of services that we offer Barbadians. But Mr. President, there has to be education. It is one thing to stand in these chambers and amend the laws, but unless the people on the ground who work in these areas treat people with the respect that is due and do not turn them away, the same old things will happen. So we can stand here and vote and say that these rules are now in place and that you are entitled to these things. But unless those who work in healthcare, and particularly in the public sector, unless we collectively treat those who are non-Barbadian equally and with the same level of urgency that all the others receive, we will not have achieved anything, and the discrimination will continue. So I call upon the government to make sure that all are aware of what people are entitled to in healthcare. It is really important. Now, Mr. President, resources, when a population changes, either upward or downward, the need for resources changes and the impact on resources change. And our proverbial water issue, our issues continue. And I've asked myself, if we have a significant change in the population, an expansion in the population, and a booming economy, can we cope with all that is needed? Senator Drake's, on our last contribution, began to expand into that area, and she decided not to. So today I want to speak a little bit about water and what can be done in the health sector to help with that resource. Now, it is one of the areas that we have to protect. Now, I know it's late, and I'm last, but I'm going to say a few things. Our hospital is probably the largest user of water, potable water, in the country. We have almost 600 patients, 2,000 plus staff, thousands of visitors every day, thousands of outpatients visiting every day, and thousands of people in A&E annually. There are many millions of toilet flushes. Incredibly, 80% of the toilets in the hospital are old 3-gallon flush toilets. 80%. Single flush. So every time you pull it, it flushes 3 gallons of water. Can you imagine how much water we will save if we changed out all of those toilets to low volume, double flush toilets that flush small volumes with a single pull and a bigger volume with a larger pull? And what effect it will have on our water bill? But it only doesn't apply to toilets. It applies to faucets that are running. It applies to shower heads. And it applies to how we use water and how we save it. There's absolutely no reason why all the roof water on that large space of roof should be running into the Constitution River. And then we buy potable water to wash down driveways and water plants and do all the other flushing that we have to do. So I call upon the government to spend a small sum of money to change out all the toilets and change the faucets and the showers and save a large amount of money and water. Mr. President, the public, I am sure, would be happy and willing to donate toilets. I'm sure they would be. It is not a complex project. It's like the garbage cans in the Ministry of Education. A project that hardly costs anything and produces tremendous results. And Mr. President, with that brief contribution, I'm obliged to you.
Senator McCarthy.
Mr. President, thank you for allowing me this opportunity to wrap up this debate. I must say, sir, that the contributions were very interesting. I must say that I'm glad that everyone who stood actually supported this bill. And I normally would go through my responses to certain senators, and I will only mention those ones where I believe that some additional information can be provided that can in fact inform some. As always, Senator Franklin was himself. And it is very interesting that even though in my introduction I would have gone through when the decisions were made for the additions of each of these different categories all the way between 2006 to 2018 for the additional categories, even though, and I must add, I was able to see a saving gram that was sent by the CARICOM Secretariat way back in January 2019, encouraging CARICOM countries to pass this legislation and move it. This would have preceded, of course, our current Prime Minister, yet still it is being said that this is about legacy. This is about Barbados' obligation. This is about something that Barbados supports across the region. And to mislead the people of Barbados to believe that this is about one person making legacy is really not true in this particular case. But in any case, if we are to leave legacy, we must add, sir, that legacy, if there is any to be left, will be the one left by Barbados, because Barbados as a country is a signatory to the revised Treaty of Tragaramas, no individual person. And indeed, sir, if the legacy of Barbados is that we are responsive and we are timely and we are supportive of regional integration, then that is a legacy Barbados should be proud to carry. Mr. Greenidge, in his presentation, spoke about the region coming together and uniting to strengthen each other and earn external respect. He talked about this effort of the free movement of people contributing to inter-island travel, and he gave one caution. He cautioned that there are people who will seek to abuse the system. And you know, that is absolutely true, Mr. President. I would like to draw the attention of this Honourable House to Clause 12 of this particular bill, which deals with the offenses and penalties for forged documents, for false documents, for fraudulently acquired documents, and for wrongful statements. And sir, there is a liability to be taken that such persons with making such offenses could be carried to court, fined $50,000 or up to 5 years in jail. Their permissions can be revoked. Any permissions that they would have received under such false representation. And Clause 11 talks about those who contravene this Caribbean Community Movement of Skilled Nationals Act or the Immigration Act, that a deportation order is there, and that those, whether you were convicted of abuses in Barbados or in another member state, that indeed we can determine that you do not get a certificate of recognition in order to qualify under these programs. So I'm very glad that these amendments and that this act does indeed anticipate those kinds of abuses and provide for us, should we choose so, to implement. Senator Moore spoke of steps as a sovereign nation that we need to take to help Barbadian nationals participate fully and to compete with other nationals from around the region in the labor market. And she mentioned training being one of those steps as a sovereign nation that we can take to help our own workers to be able to do better. And I certainly want to take this opportunity, Mr. President, to compliment the Barbados Workers Union, and I believe in another life, Senator Moore might be a part of that organization, who just in January, a few weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, embarked on a program with the TVET, which is the Technical and Educational, Vocation and Educational Training Council, to put a level 2 CVQ, that is the Caribbean vocational qualification, in place for security guards. And, and so indeed, it is good to see that they are doing that, and as a government as well, sir, in terms of getting our, preparing our persons, our laborers, our personnel. The National Training Initiative is about to be launched by this country. We are now, by this governor, we are now in the sensitization phase. The National Training Initiative, which the remit of which is to do training to the level of excellence in the informal sectors. Those are your coconut vendors, your car washers, in the third sector, which is nonprofit sector, as well as in the private sector. They will be training everything all the way from coconut vendors and car washers all the way up to CEOs, sir. And we are now in that sensitization phase. They have now presented to the Social Partnership, the Human Resource Committee. You will be hearing more about the National Training Initiative because it will be presented to the organizing committees of regathering. And there is much more that we are doing to ensure that we are equipping our country at all levels with the ability for us to compete and to truly execute to the level of excellence in our professional areas. And I thank Senator Wiggins for sharing the information on the work she's doing in Suriname with the laborers who will work there in food production that will redound to the benefit not only of Barbados, but of course of Suriname and others in the region. Mr. Springer spoke about the movement of people throughout the region for education and how that has certainly served the region well. And in fact, he was supported by Senator Moore, who spoke of the teachers and the policemen and the jurists and the other professions in the region that help Barbadians to go abroad and others in the region to broaden their perspectives, their relationships, and their professional horizons. Senator Grant, who has himself been an outstanding son of the Caribbean and has in fact benefited from his free movement in the region at a professional level. He spoke of, and I think it is a very important point he made. He said that for a long time, we have had people who moved from the Caribbean region who moved outside of the region to build other countries, and that it is time that we create the environment where people can move more freely within the Caribbean to build the Caribbean. Mr. Maynard, I am not sure how he got on water from this, but that is okay, sir. I understand that you were very generous in the latitude you gave to him. But he did talk very seriously about treating people with respect, non-Barbadians equally, who even as they move around the Caribbean as part of the skilled laborers and their families, that we make sure that we have not just sensitized but trained and truly shifted the mindset of those workers in the healthcare industry who are administering care to persons who are non-Barbadians, to ensure that the level of discrimination that he has witnessed in his profession does not indeed continue. Mr. President, it is clear that even with the implementation of this particular, the amendments in this bill, once it becomes an act, that things will still not be perfect. But I think that Barbados continues on its path of continuous improvement. We recognize where there is need. I did say earlier that in the implementation of many of the commitments that we have with regards to the Caribbean community, we have made steps, we have stalled, and we have stumbled. And I trust that we will continue to press ahead as we have done before in the effort to make this Caribbean region a much stronger place and a place of greater prosperity. And sir, with just those few words, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
The question is, the bill currently under consideration be now read a second time. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honor do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
Question is that I do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate for the further consideration of this bill in committee. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it, and we are now in committee. You, Kathy.
The Senate is now in committee.
Deputy President, may I take the bill in parts?
Yes.
Clauses 1
You'll be
to
taking
5.
the bill in parts. Yeah.
Clauses 1 to 5.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clauses 1 to 5 stand part.
The question is that clauses 1 to 5 stand part. Honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clauses 6 to 10.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clauses 6 to 10 stand part.
The question is that clauses 6 to 10 stand part. Honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clauses 11 to 14.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clauses 11 to 14 stand part.
The question is that clauses 11 to 14 stand part. Honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The first to the fifth schedules.
Schedules 1 to 5. Schedules 1 to 5.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that schedules 1 to 5 be the schedules to this bill.
The question is that schedules 1 to 5 be the schedules to the bill. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that
No report to pass.
you do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
In committee.
The chairman has reported to me.
The Chairman has reported to me the passes of the bill under consideration in committee.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be now read a third time.
Question is that the bill before us be now read a third time. All honourable members in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do now pass and be cited as the Caribbean Community Movement of Skilled Nationals Amendment Act 2020.
Question is that the bill under consideration do now pass and be so cited. All honourable members in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The bill is now being passed and will be so cited.
Mr. President, with the business of the sitting now concluded, I beg to move that we now
Before to be appointed.
that we now adjourn this sitting without today appointed. Sign a die.
Question is that this session of the Senate be now adjourned without a day appointed. All honourable members in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it, and we now stand adjourned.